Not close enough, it seems.
We need to redouble our efforts, expand our order, and establish a permanent base here. Although the site eludes us, I am confident we will find it.
Truth?
Hear, hear.
Furthermore, I believe it is time we welcome Charles into our fold. He has proven himself a loyal disciple and served unerringly since the day he came to us. He should be able to share in our knowledge and reap all the benefits that such a gift implies. Are any opposed? Very well. Charles, come, stand. Do you swear to uphold the principles of our order and all that for which we stand?
I do.
And never to share our secrets nor divulge the true nature of our work.
Many others a unique opportunity to race the Cup Series. One of those newcomers was a 23-year-old Richard Childress, who would use the prize money from his big break to open up his own racing team. In 1981, Childress retired from racing and handed over the reins of his number 3 car to NASCAR's newest champion, a driver by the name of Dale Earnhardt.
You all saw that, right?
With Richard Childress racing, Earnhardt would go on to win 6 of his 7 Cup championships.
The key must
give a shit about these people.
Iconic stock car of the 20th century. Earnhardt's career will always be most intertwined with Daytona, but one of his most impressive feats was coming the closest of anyone to conquering Talladega. Despite hating restrictor plate racing more so than any other driver, Earnhardt was undeniably the best at it. He was so skilled at driving that some competitors swore that he could literally see the air coming off the cars. In October 2000, Talladega would be the site of his final career victory.
Agungwe da sun a wahuan nordun kwedzi niot ne sagode ya ogun a. Zewajer da sriat dizax ne heitham. Raganero kwakwe unte zini togwanyo. Nekzi ohando yo hawihtun ya de haganer akwe. Zinur da ojokwa templar agwego tadinyaro darhox. Ne ha atket sarnis. Zigatke sun arian a higun sagandanu agat gahto zine sagar raskanex.
But after the action and they turned forward into the Daytona 500, we lost Dale Earnhardt.
After suffering such terrible loss, the Talladega spirits would shine favorably on Dale Earnhardt Jr., who would immediately carry on his father's legacy. 1 year after Dale Sr.'s final victory, Dale Jr. would score his first Talladega victory, one of 4 wins in a row. Pick Piper of Super Speedway Racing. Dale Jr.'s remarkable success on NASCAR's biggest stage would make him an instant favorite. The newest racing superstar would carry both Talladega and the sport in which present-day incarnation. By now, Talladega had become so infamous in pop culture that someone was bound to make a movie about it. 2006 saw the release of the Will Ferrell comic Talladega Nights.
This is the part where we get to...
Zaga the dirty wasta. NASCAR's first race at Talladega after the film's release. A near identical storyline would play out in reality. Back in the
So of course downside is we have
just 15 laps to go and has a chance to score his first career victory in the biggest race of the year. Johnson passes him and goes Underwood instead. 2 months later at this race, Talladega race, Vickers
Gundi Gawana Oguaho Yaga Gundi Nagere Gaa Tony Guinness
Dananera dietine kera, Runungue, Runsa Nage, the what Chiratavas. Wagari Warge, the Ot Starda, and Netanyahu, the Nagare.
Energy
Talladega finally saw behind Dale Jr. with closing laps. Both Johnson and Jr. are in a tight championship battle.
Manahoda de what Karitsu Dunyane.
What happens next race wasn't exactly a shaky bake.
Haha, Zorda Gohadu.
Talladega has always been known for its sensational
Easy does it
finishes. Since 1980, about a third of all Talladega races have ended in a landslide
Oscar
pass.
Degani
So the
Ensemble.
rules will trade to great effect in Talladega Nights, which makes use of the track's most distinct feature. While most tracks are designed with the finish line in the center of the front straightaway, Talladega's is about 1,000 feet farther down the track towards the entrance. This unique design aspect has affected the outcomes of countless races. It's amazing what can happen if you leave someone with just a little more room to run. The name Seminole can be traced back to the Spanish word cimarron, or runaway. They were a tribe composed of wildly different people who all shared a single unifying vision, a refusal to be conquered. The Seminole warriors fought valiantly. They pushed the U.S. military to the most challenging and expensive conflict with any indigenous group in the nation's history. However, eventually, the Seminole losses had become catastrophic, and they simply couldn't outlast the overwhelming resources of the United States. One by one, the Seminole chiefs were captured and forced to surrender. By 1843, nearly the entire Seminole tribe were forcibly relocated to the Creek Reservation in Oklahoma. Only a small fraction managed to evade government capture by fleeing into the Everglades, a vast stretch of swampy wilderness considered by American settlers to be inhospitable. After nearly a decade of constant fighting, the military decided that further pursuit was no longer worth the trouble. By the end of the war, as few as 100 Seminoles remained, the last of the runaways. Throughout the rest of the 19th century, all of the other indigenous people in America would be forced to submit to government rule. Eventually, the Everglades Seminoles would remain as the last free tribe within U.S. territory. Despite all of their power and might, America could never conquer the Seminole people. There are some things in this world that you simply cannot control. Since its very first race, Pittsburgh has always struggled to control the Talladega. They simultaneously created the world's most dangerous track. NASCAR has always straddled the fine line between entertainment and safety. Throughout the history of the track, the sanctions body have been in a constant balancing act in trying to prevent the next Talladega catastrophe while maintaining the track's unique appeal. The continual addition of rules and regulations has resulted in a style of racing that looks completely unrecognizable to the sport's humble beginning.
And slamming into one another, they're hitting each other in the corner. Eventually, just what happens.
Many drivers today feel that Talladega racing is a glorified crapshoot, which is somewhat emblematic of modern NASCAR as a whole.
You know, look, these championships aren't like winning like Freddie and Earl used to win them. And, you know, it comes down to it's a one race.
How far are you willing to compromise the merit of competition to manufacture a spectator product? NASCAR is always trying to tweak the sport to make races more exciting, but there comes a point where all the micromanagement becomes counterproductive.
It's like to be out here doing this anyway. Trying to put on some huge show for whatever the hell this is. It's stupid. There's no sense in doing this.
One of the most defining aspects of present-day Talladega has been the looming threat of controversy, where it started to drive bureaucracies of spoiling the race itself. In 2003, NASCAR announced a policy of allowing drivers to race after the caution flag, as the practice was becoming too dangerous. Instead, the field would be frozen at the moment of caution, a change that would reach a breaking point the next spring at Talladega. When the caution came out with 5 laps to go, fans were thrilled that Dale Jr. would be for the lead. However, he was instead awarded to Jeff Gordon, as he was slightly ahead of the exact moment of caution. The race would not be restarted as Gordon would coast to a very unpopular win, as frustrated fans pelted the track with debris. NASCAR checkerboard minimize the chances of races ending under caution, a policy that has since undergone numerous confusing and inconsistent changes over the years. One of the most baffling officiating decisions for any NASCAR finish happened at the 2016 Xfinity Series race in Talladega. At first, it looked to be an amazing feel-good story with underdog driver Brennan Poole.
What have we here?
Scored first NASCAR win. However, in an unprecedented reversal, NASCAR would award the victory instead to Elliott Sadler. The officials had bizarrely frozen the field less than 1,000 feet from the finish line, and in that instant, Sadler's car was briefly in the lead, despite being in the process of crashing. To this day, Brennan Poole is still searching for his first win.
And by that much, Elliott Sadler, a win over Brennan Poole in Talladega.
Not even NASCAR's biggest stars covered the jinx of Talladega controversy. Later in the 04 season, Dale Jr. would avenge the dubious runner-up finish by winning the Fall Talladega race, only to once again wind up at in his victory lane interview, Jr. would a mistake that would normally be a non-issue, but it just so happened that this was the year of James Jackson's wardrobe at the Super Bowl, and networks at this time were hyper-vigilant in maintaining their standards and practices. As a result, Jr. would become which network Jim's name. 2004 was the best season of Jim's career. He made very well with the title with all of us are so sensitive over a four-letter word.
The championship is over, and here's how it ended up.
2004 marked the end of NASCAR's chase for the Cup, which eventually forced the NASCAR playoffs. The 2014-16 playoffs were very much the most busted and unfair format in the history of motorsports. In October 2015, the system would be painfully closed at where Reynolds went Talladega. This era decided to make Talladega a cutoff race for the next round. We have some drivers who whatever they could to avoid elimination. Kevin Harvick clearly felt that these first
John, onak ti on sa dego. Onak. Zodi onago ono.
The caution comes out the finish line and advances to the next
Zet
round.
hot step. Radun hagedu. Onak ti on sa ni gora sa ni du hagedu.
Keep it going slower and not going to make it go 3 for 2 laps, but I don't know, it just feels like we kind of lost control on the situation. These championships aren't like winning, like Betty Earnhardt.
Modern day NASCAR curveballs, and drivers will adapt to whatever gets them. One of the most peculiar changes in superspeedway strategy was the brief rise of tandem driving. Following the release of NASCAR's Car Tomorrow, drivers began to realize that the flat design leading to one of the most unbelievable finishes of all time.
Wasqueni, Yasodi the one to rehme, wahi.
Oh, the gun his guts not the owner. Jimmy Johnson would edge out the win by 2 1,000.
Easy owner.
However, during his brief stint, in the draft represented two extremes
There's a Tinuwe yo Dikunde.
and NASCAR would eliminate the strategy in the following season. While tandem drafting was relatively uncommon, many fans today look back to the early what has never been viewed on
Let Tony Gari was Tona Tuhaga.
that NASCAR has ever implemented.
No, no, Skagwiden, the Wasagayeri ni Hadi, Renumbe, Tahuna Daka, Nona was Kananaga, the what not Neda. Iga Garhabunsu on the Rakto, Gaa on Zaga on the Deep. Garden is also asked the one when I had the Yaskari was the Inkia Quatas.
Sego Eno Tune.
Ha, Netizaha after the Honenu Haje. They do Zohun Jokna the wire, to go Yaho Tena tie the wire, to go Yah.
That's cannot get races ever since. In an attempt to reduce the number of accidents, NASCAR started penalizing drivers for passing on the apron in the straightaway, which they now mark as out of bounds with a double yellow line. Despite their good intention, this change was a prime example of NASCAR trying to outsmart the rule by adding a needlessly complicated judgment call to what was a self-policing issue.
Apa, saya Raja.
In 2003, Dale Jr. was nominated on this pass for the win. 5 years later, Regan Smith would not be so fortunate after he was forced below the line while passing Tony Stewart for the win.
I got forced another guy side of him, and I could have piled up the whole field. I guess that would have been a cool finish. I don't know. But I always got told that the rule is if you get forced down there, then the win.
Even as recently as last year, NASCAR still has seemingly no idea how to execute the rule. Denny Hamlin went way below the line of this pass for the win and wasn't penalized. And the worst part is, there's no evidence to suggest that the rule has had any effect on its intended purpose of preventing accidents. If anything, the rule has contributed to an increase in accidents, as it effectively constricts more cars within a narrower space.
Yeah, I got a great idea for everybody. How about we just get rid of the yellow line rule? Nobody really wants to see the races come down to these type of decisions, and I don't think it's going to crash more cars than we crashed today.
Oh, no, Denirata.
Recent races at Talladega have been about as close as you can get to a demolition derby. It's not uncommon these days for a race to end with less than a dozen finish line. Over the past 2 decades, the intended consequence of which was ushering in a new generation of drivers who no longer fear accidents. Back in the day, drivers were forced to use restraint on the track because the consequences of wrecking. Today, drivers are mostly free to take unthinkable risks on track and walk away from any maintenance they see on cars. Twice a year now, drivers start a race at Talladega knowing that they most likely won't make it to the finish.
Sorry for the technical issue with cars today. We didn't fill the formula for today for Talladega and NASCAR. If we haven't reached at least 50% of the field by the end of the race, we need to extend the race till we at least crash 50% of the cars.
This is Talladega, and this is the Talladega curse. All the way back in 1969, we didn't just construct a racetrack. We constructed a monument to mankind's arrogance. We created something that we can never truly conquer, so that we can spend eternity chasing our endless desire for more. No matter how fast we follow them, all roads at Talladega eventually lead to destruction, misfortune, and controversy. The state of Alabama carries with it a hauntingly somber past. It has been the epicenter of some of the most unforgivable sins that we as a nation have ever committed. A history that's stained as red as the clay on which it all lies. And unlike clay, the mistakes of our past will never wash out. They follow us as painful echoes from a faraway time that's somehow still too close to us. We can never unhear them, but maybe if we get enough race cars together in one place, we can drown them out, even if it's just for a few hours at a time.
The writer, the Southern writer, William Faulkner once put it, between grief and nothing, I will take grief.
People always ask me why I watch NASCAR, why I enjoy something riddled with so many imperfections. And to that, I simply answer that we can design the perfect race car, but we can never design the perfect driver. Talladega may not be the greatest display of racing, but it is the greatest display of humanity. It's a racetrack where speed, skill, and machinery no longer matter. It's a venue that only seems to grow more prosperous through its legacy of disaster. It's a battleground where the mistakes of the few are destined to end the journeys of the many. The only place in all of racing that produces no winners, only survivors. Don't you think? Every year on the NASCAR schedule, there are two dates that I never forget to tune in. When America's greatest drivers are confronted with the one track they fear most. In the land that America's native people once called home, 40 race cars are cursed to reenact their story.
That must be at least 30 cars in that race. God help all of them because there's no place to go.
The Seminoles bided their time in the Everglades for more than 100 years. They emerged in an America that had grown rich off the lands they had claimed long ago. An America that was now looking to move on from its centuries-long conquest. In 1957, the Seminole tribe was granted federal recognition by the U.S. government, extending them special privileges as a sovereign jurisdiction. By the 1970s, the Seminole had begun using these privileges to host high-stakes bingo homes, which would go on to be the very first Indian casinos. While most of the Seminole tribe gradually integrated into modern society, a small part would continue their traditional way of life in the Everglades. This group would go on to form a new tribe, known as the Miccosukee. In 2002, the Miccosukee tribe was looking to advertise their new casino and turn to the Lord of Casper. 7 years later, the Miccosukee car would be the centerpiece of the most unbelievable moment in Talladega history. It's April 26, 2009.
Ona ga gaho am za draft down di.
The struggles of the Great Recession.
I want to go on to draft down di.
A few of them turned on the NASCAR Cup Series race at Talladega.
Dohum tahum yo snore am tayo kwate.
In this race,
Yo 20 se kan heya te. Kaya tanoru ne giga de hum tanega. Onek tiya de waderi ho konyas thage ne sa oyera.
Something truly unprecedented. The 99 car of Carl Edwards rockets into the lead and starts pulling away from the pack. He's being pushed by a car no one has paid any mind to all day. The Miccosukee car, driven by rookie Brad Keselowski. After 7 years in the sport, the Miccosukee team has never won a Cup Series race. Their best opportunity to do so is now resting on the shoulders of a driver making just his 5th career start. Going into today, there's such long shots to win that odds makers didn't bother listening.
Dadena totas aun dasade sanuni.
The Miccosukee car has
Dogan
just
se
one driver
sadawate.
standing in its way.
Do wadi negene. Jujerato onek tiya se tsari zinume gujadarorox ne gundirio. Dio sumagarde, de watskan hukwa. Zikahne gihrata. Zezak ne goyendere watrori zi unwak to dundundawari.
He thinks about what happened to Regan Smith the year prior. He knows that if he goes below that line, it's game over. The Miccosukee car has been forced to
Kanaktiyo ne gaan karhara.
He can go no further. It has been given no choice but to stand its ground.
Can Keselowski try to win it? I don't think he can step out until he gets to the ladder.
Hauki oya zijat karhara. Kan tozat karhara.
Kan niot.
Yo yanere. Hau jade nyanda ne zaha gario dawana ye deniena. Zini gariwe sugenir hare.
The funny thing about NASCAR is that if you watch long enough, everything always comes full circle.
It's what I've been getting in 2024, which means that my business.
Ho idawes. So that's the nearest is a honor.
Ja, kaya kuiritanu kahure aunaya anka taksa de ne kanehu. Negigas kayada kesnusage ankatste zi anjena. Onaktis kena sun a anke. Toka oskenundu ayungenika amadego. Takwaderoro. Tamaga da huzose au da geni gora di hatto.
Yo, buenas, you are serio. Yo, yanere.
Ona deni rora ke zino hoda de odon zohu. On se jatka zera neyut kar harakpa.
Yeah, do it, motherfucker.
Timjatum zoni segu, nektiate zugini naktude. Onekti de deni zaru anjadorade. Toga idenere ya da idenokta.
Yahte wagder yon dare.
Kunye takwa, tazadade takwa, ni nize.
Morton was a driver who always seemed to be in the wrong place at the wrong time. He is perhaps best known for finishing the 07 Daytona 500 upside down. He was still talented enough to achieve.
Damn.
A Chevy Super Cruise powered by Hotstar. And
in Sam Hill.
One day when I was very young, I was playing in the living room as my dad came to work. I'd watch him come through the front door pretty much every day, but for whatever reason, this was the first time I really saw him. Despite witnessing this same routine hundreds of times at this point, I never noticed before just how somber and exhausting he was after I came to the office. And so, wanting to make it better, I told him something that most adults would say to me whenever I was feeling down. I asked him, "Did you have fun?" He stopped for a moment. What he said next, I'll never forget. He looked me in the eyes and told me, "No, son, God was opportunity for us to have fun." And that was the day I figured out that people don't like going to work.
Damn.
No. Wrong. It's come to my attention that you're not measuring up. You'll need to stay late. Again. With no overtime. Your project has to be completely redone. You can't seem to do anything right. Oh, I'm gonna have to write you up again, too. You're just not measuring up. That's 3 more demerits this week. Did you get the memo about the pay cut? 10% across the board. We've got to cut back. It's the bottom line, you see. Years later, my dad showed me a movie, one that he related to very much. And although I really didn't understand what was going on most of the time, I remember being somewhat entertained. I didn't think much of it besides that, but as the years went by, this movie just kept sticking in my memory. Every now and then I would watch it again, and the more I watched it, the more its meaning started to change. As I got older, I started to realize that I was no longer watching a film. I was watching a prophecy. The year 1999 shows up in my work over and over again. This wasn't by design, but by now it has to feel like an oddly personal obsession. What is it about this specific year that I found to be so compelling? The answer is difficult to put into words. If I had to boil it down to one thing, I'd compare it to the sensation of standing over a precipice. It's an ominous feeling to consider what exactly awaits us on the other side. It turns out that plenty of ominous events can be not only 1999, but in reality and fiction. According to IMDb, the 2 most critically acclaimed films of 1999 are Fight Club and The Matrix, both of which happen to feature characters who grapple with artificial reality. But when it comes to instilling existential dread, 1999 produced another movie, which I personally found to be more frightening. This is a video about the most influential film of my life. On the surface, it's a straightforward comedy about the white-collar workplace. While many know the film for its memorable dialogue and eccentric characters, its true importance extends far, far beyond that. This is the story of Peter Gibbons, a computer programmer who's average in just about every way. Responsible, stays out of trouble, and more or less does what he's told. He tries his best to lead a sensible life. He has a decent car, decent apartment, and decent relationships with his friends. This is all to suggest that nothing about Peter is especially strange or abnormal. By all accounts, he's a model citizen of 20th century America. Except for one problem. He is absolutely miserable.
So I was sitting in my cubicle and I realized, ever since I started working, every single day of my life is worse than the day before it.
We're told that this shouldn't be possible. Now, the privileges afforded to white-collar Americans are supposed to indicate the end state of history. Peter's lot in life is not just fortunate, it's the pot of gold at the end of the rainbow. Modern office workers are given luxury that would have been unimaginable to most people who ever lived. The ability to operate in a climate-controlled space with practically zero risk of danger or bodily injury. The only effort you have to physically exert is tapping away at a magic machine with access to limitless possibilities. You'd think that someone blessed with these modern marvels would be thrilled, or at the very least ambivalent. On the contrary, Peter Gibbons actively prevents computer work each day. How can this be the case? A job like Peter's is the great achievement of society. Think about all the suffering and ideological warfare it took for such a thing to be possible. Forget the Cold War. This job is the direct product of 10,000 years of civilization. This is everything, and you're telling me that you don't like it? How dare you? Well, let's ask Mike Judge how. In 1987, a young engineer in Silicon Valley was having second thoughts about his career path. Just 3 months into the job, he quits to go pursue something a little more enticing. After touring with the business for a couple of years, he eventually settles in the emerging field of animation. His early cartoons are quite rudimentary, but through the crude lines and voices, a clear vision begins to emerge. It's not hard to tell that Mike Judge has a somewhat cynical view of society. His works paint a dysfunctional picture of the modern world, one that is defined primarily by the incongruence of modern people. This theme is evident in Judge's first major breakthrough, Beavis and Butthead, a comedy that perfectly captures the
Girls party.
The dynamic of the show is best be described as two irrational people antagonizing a rational world. Judge's next series, King of the Hill, flips this dynamic on its head, where the main character, Hank, resembles a rational man dealing with an irrational world. Both of these cartoons would go on to see extraordinary success, as Judge ascended to a high commodity in the entertainment industry. After the success of the Beavis and Butthead feature film, he was given the opportunity to direct another movie, one that features a rational man trying to an irrational world. The project sought to further develop a prominent short about an oddball office worker named Milton, who would be Judge's first foray into live-action directing. Soon enough, the once silly premise transformed into something far more bold. Eventually, the decision was made to have the main conflict of the film center around the protagonist who hates his job. It's difficult to understate how risky this idea was in the late 90s. America has always had a strong work culture, and for generations it was considered taboo to complain about your lot in life, especially if you were fortunate enough to work in an office. People have to be able to relate to a person. And a premise like this could have easily come off as whiny and entitled. At first, Judge's ambition appeared to have backfired, as the film's theatrical release was a financial disappointment. However, over the next few years, something about it started to catch on. After a few issues on television, Office Space saw a remarkable rise in popularity, most notably among the very workers it satirized. It turned out that Judge had succeeded in making a relatable product. It was so relatable, in fact, that it seemed to produce a hypnotic effect in certain people. Depending on your place in the world, the appeal of the film went far beyond its simple solace. For white-collar workers, Office Space represented a spiritual awakening. It communicated something that was previously unspoken. The film presents the audience with a seemingly straightforward wants to work again. What exactly is wrong with him?
Vamos a de
What if he could taste the Mickey's? We turned that idea into an $11.3 million business with Wix. Answering this is no easy task. It forces us to examine who we really are as human beings. This type of truth-seeking can prove quite dangerous, as many of us won't like what there is to be found. The most depressed I've ever been was during my first semester of college, when I realized that my life was turning into Peter's. I felt like I was stuck on a conveyor belt that was carrying me towards an office. That had always been my destination, but at some point, I felt a shift into everything else that was passing me by. I was suddenly overcome with this inescapable sense of as if everything I had known was just a lie. I never made it to that office, and ever since then, I've been trying to figure out what about it was read. Whenever you question the modern labor system, you're usually met with one of two responses. The first is that conditions are significantly better today than they were then. The second is that if you don't like your job, you're free to seek employment somewhere else. These are some pretty cheerful things to say. Something about it doesn't add up. So many people in modern society are profoundly miserable, and as the rates of depression and anxiety continue to soar higher and higher, you have to wonder if there's something seriously wrong with how most of us spend our waking hours. If you think about it long enough, you start to toy around with the possibility that many of us might be better off if we stopped going to work altogether. I get to work hard again. Great, my life. What do I have to show for it? As soon as you bring up this idea, others are quick to dismiss it as either selfish entitlement or communist propaganda. But the true gravity of the question goes far beyond a matter of political disagreement. It starts to venture into the realm of sociology, confronting the very foundations of human behavior. For most of industrial society, it lacks the knowledge to even adequately address what's being asked here. This was largely a consequence of us understanding economics before understanding ourselves. If you ever feel like you're living a lie,
I'm just standing on a ayaw zero na jade ho di ni ko rayanda ne tino jera ya ezo de tiena
Nexiato deo.
Oh ni
Rat dokkawa hageri honya.
It was here, under no scientific basis, that Hobbes proclaimed the lives of archaic humans to be solitary, poor, nasty, brutish, and short. This quotation would go on to be one of the most reproduced lines in the English language, and its influence on society can still be felt today. Hobbes' theory stood unchallenged for centuries as a grand, all-encompassing thesis for the purpose of civilization. When billions of people today wake up at the crack of dawn and sit in bumper-to-bumper traffic to get to a job they hate, they tell themselves, this may be bad, but think about how much worse it would be if none of this stuff existed. It was only through recent strides in anthropology that we realized the foundation of modern politics and economics was dead wrong.
I believe that as a species, human beings find their reality misery and suffering, which is where the matrix is this
The Matrix, Agent Smith describes the year 1999 as the peak of civilization, but is civilization necessarily the peak of humanity? The entirety of written history constitutes roughly 2% of mankind's total existence. While nearly all political discussion is confined to this narrow slice, not many of us bother to venture into the other 98%, which is otherwise known as prehistory.
Greetings, Guardian.
Are you a spirit?
You may think of me as such.
Where am I?
You are where you were before. If you need to ask what it is you now see, it is known as the Nexus. From here, probabilities are calculated so that the proper path may be chosen.
What path?
Yours.
They share some remarkably similar behavior. Present-day hunter-gatherers tend to have three universal characteristics. The first is a harmonious relationship with nature and other people. They possess a deep reverence and gratitude often expressed through a powerful sense of spirituality. The second characteristic is mobility.
What have you done to me?
Selected a form familiar to your culture. It is designed to ease navigation. We have waited millennia for your arrival. You, who will bring to him the last piece, that he may open the door.
I do not understand.
Nor need you. I sense my words cause pain. But such was not my intention. You are important, child, in more ways than you will ever know. As we speak, forces gather in secret, preparing to seize control of the land. If they succeed, the sanctuary will be breached. Yours is a special lineage. Past, present, future. Many are connected to you. Many who have changed the world, who will change the world. So too shall you. I have called you here that you might know your duty. You must protect Sanctuary from those who would undo our work.
What sanctuary? What work?
Maintaining your current course will result in a negative outcome.
I wish I could just
Premature access will destabilize the region. Your village and its people will be destroyed.
What am I to do?
You will learn of a man who will provide additional training. No doubt you have many questions. Time will see them answered. For now, you must follow. Leading is for later.
By this metric, most of us are far less prosperous than our prehistoric ancestors. Out of all the hunter-gatherer tribes ever studied, it's rare to see anyone work more than 3 to 4 hours per day. Some tribes don't even have a word for work, at least not in the way we define it. The day-to-day responsibilities of foraging cultures are not treated as employment. Rather, they are voluntary social activities that more closely resemble what people are doing. This carefree approach to life certainly opens up a lot more time to do nothing. Of course, when people say they want to do nothing, they're not talking about staring at a wall like a statue. They're describing the concept of leisure, something that only seems to be getting more scarce from time. I'm gonna need you to go ahead and come into it. In office space, here is overwork. And it's the opposite of the approach of what little time he has left. This is the essential struggle that plagues all modern workers. When you go to work and collect a paycheck, the process is more accurately described as
Leaving home was harder than I thought. I expected the journey would fill me with a sort of pride, a sense of accomplishment. But whatever it was that carried me away from home soon fled, replaced by questions and no small amount of doubt. Had I been too hasty? Had I made a mistake? The others in the village, they thought this was something I wanted, something I chose to do. But it never felt that way to me. No, it was not a choice. It was an obligation. Because if not me, then who?
It's disturbing how we're even in the same conversation. The average American now expect to spend 90,000 hours at work in their life. About 1/3 of it's now common for some people to spend more time with their coworkers than the people they actually care about. We accept this as normality because we've never known any other way. But our intuition tells us that something about the whole thing is wrong. It wasn't supposed to turn out this way. provided us with roughly as much leisure time as hunter-gatherers before. And yet, after technology and economic output have very much soared, people are still working as much as ever. Well, in that case, surely the record-breaking productivity of the workforce must be reflected in booming wages. Somehow, this is also not the case. It would seem that we're sacrificing quite a lot these days for the privilege of going to work. With all that in mind, that people must really love their jobs. The moment Peter walks through the front door of an internet, he is assaulted by a non-stop barrage of aggravation. Government is a hostile and oppressive landscape of unearthing threatening now. The technology he depends on is often dysfunctional, resulting in frequent delays and setbacks. Most of his co-workers make him uncomfortable with awkward and overbearing behavior. Pestered all day by surrounded words, the most relentless of urges is sworn enemy no longer. We're told that Peter's official job is to update bank software for the outcome like Avon, but we rarely ever get to see him do it. That's because he's often preoccupied with something far more important.
We need to talk about your TPS reports.
The infamous TPS report isn't actually a real thing. My judge made it up for the film, yet everyone knows exactly what it is. All experience with saying irrelevant things will design to chew up even more of your already loaded schedule. If the company's buying your time, they will make damn sure they end up listening. While trapped in a Russian prison camp, the legendary writer Fyodor Dostoevsky once tried to conceive of the worst possible method of torture. He surmised that the most psychologically destructive thing you could do to someone would be forcing them to repeat a pointless task over and over again until they go mad. At the end of the day, it's not the sweeping acts of cruelty that crush our spirits. It's the little things. Peter's situation is far from easy. As much as 80% of the workforce is dissatisfied with their job, as much as 50% considers their job to be pointless. Before speaking of the situation, Office Space provides us with an unorthodox solution.
When the sawdust settles, and the engine finally roars, the thing you care about most, but you don't think it's any about it, does it? Think with my cousin. He's broke up with shit.
As far as we're concerned, the goal of a capitalist system is to maximize profits by minimizing effort. A capitalist is successful when they take home the most wealth. That much is obvious. However, equally successful is the capitalist who spends the least time working. After Peter sees his hypnotherapist keel over and die in front of him, he reaches an epiphany. He decides that he will succeed by doing nothing. The next morning, Peter doesn't show up for work.
I don't like my job. I don't think I'm gonna go.
He sleeps in, ignores Lumber's phone calls, and acts out the girly likes. Over the next few days, they watch movies and go fishing. Eventually, he feels like it. Heads back to the office, but not for the job. He shows up in street clothes, or a certain lot, gets up for the photo, watches, pulling video games, he does a little bit of desperate. Lumber are tools to stop him. After just a few days of doing nothing, Peter has become ungovernable.
It absolutely nothing and everything that I thought it could be.
It turns out that plenty of companies are afraid of their workers doing nothing. If enough people join in, they just might have to treat them better. While all this has been going on, however, the rest of the office has taken a turn for the worse.
What would you say?
Initech has hired a pair of overpaid consultants to strip the fat of the workforce. One by one, each of Peter's friends has to step into the lion's den and plead their case for why they deserve to keep the job. The ritual is sadistic and humiliating. The workers groan and beg as they desperately try to spare themselves the indignity of getting laid off. This exercise serves as a harrowing reminder of the true power that the system holds over us.
What the hell is wrong with you people?
Your job so much. Why don't you just... His response was a disappointing. At face value, it seems like a reasonable question. We live in a free country States. So what's the big deal? Why can't more people just do what Peter did? There's a new word in the lexicon. You may have heard of it. If you're finding a job to be increasingly menial and dehumanizing, then you just might be a wage. A shorthand term to describe a wage slave. For a conventional understanding, this concept may seem like an oxymoron. Getting compensated for your labor through a wage is strictly antithetical to the inherent nature of bondage. Western civilization certainly prides itself on abolishing slavery, although some would argue that it never really went away. Once the overlords of society could no longer own human beings, they had to get a little more creative at coercing labor out of people. Of course, there were always the age-old institutions that sort of, but not quite, resemble slavery. Serfdom, for example, forces peasants to work in exchange for the land they live on.
Get out of the way!
Indentured servitude forces people to work for
After him!
time until they pay off an outstanding debt. Ever since the Industrial Revolution, debt has been used as the primary instrument for keeping people. Coal mines were infamous for setting up company stores where employees were sold basic necessities on credit that they could not possibly repay with their wages. In the American South, the practice of debt bondage was used as a proxy to extend slave conditions well into the 1950s. Even in the present day, plenty of Americans are still defined by what they owe. As many as 1 in 4 Americans are estimated to have a negative net worth, meaning that they could not pay off their debt even if they sold everything they owned. More than 1 in 3 are just treading water by living paycheck to paycheck, while an outright majority don't have enough cash to cover a $1,000 emergency. If anyone in these circumstances took even a month off work, they would suffer disastrous consequences. Their situation doesn't really leave them with much choice in the matter. The threat of bankruptcy is awfully persuasive at making people stick with even the most oppressive working conditions. Many will argue that debt and spending are volitional, and that people who mismanage their finances deserve what happens to them. I'd be more inclined to believe this if these problems didn't affect the majority of people you see on the street. There comes a point when a vice of society is so widespread that it can't be written off as incidental. If this much of the workforce is struggling, you have to consider whether it's a product of intentional design. If you think that receiving a paycheck waives your right to protest any sort of mistreatment, it's really worth considering the psychological effect.
Hello. You must be one of them native fellas from the, what's it called? Iroquois tribe. Hey, you from that?
Of course not, Terry. Iroquois ain't a tribe.
Is so.
Is not.
The most severe punishment that a prison can enforce on an inmate is placing them in solitary confinement, where they are completely cut off from any meaningful communication with others. Strangely enough, this terrible fate now seems to afflict plenty of people in the free world as well. In hunter-gatherer society, being left alone was the equivalent of being left for dead. Human beings are not solitary creatures. We're designed to exist in a community that has our backs. Modern offices have no shortage of people, but the social fabric hardly resembles any sort of tribal unity.
Sounds like somebody's got a case of the Pointers.
The temperament of most workplaces today can more closely be described as every man for themselves. There's not much room for camaraderie when everyone knows they're only around to collect a paycheck. For some, this fake veneer of acquaintanceship is even more disquieting than literal loneliness. What good is being surrounded by others if you can't really trust any of them? Corporate structures desperately try to stimulate their human connection with hollow messages of teamwork in order to company down. But deep down, everyone knows that when the opportunity presents itself, that so-called family
I need a place to camp.
That's just business. It's nothing personal. Sell you out in a heartbeat. That's just business. It's nothing personal. And maybe that's precisely the problem.
Oh yeah, we're gonna bring in some entry-level graduates, find some kind of Singapore attainable deal.
Peter's trip through Wonderland comes to an abrupt end when he finds out that his friends Michael and Samir are getting fired. Despite being competent, diligent workers, Initech is kicking them to the curb. In the same conversation, Peter learns that by doing nothing, he's being rewarded with a promotion.
So you're gonna fire Michael and Samir and you're gonna give me more money?
Out of everything he's dealt with, it's the sheer unfairness of it all that drives him over the edge. We all have a built-in desire for equity. This trait is so embedded in our instincts that it can even be observed in other primates. When it comes to the modern workplace, perhaps the biggest elephant in the room is the one at the top of the company ladder. As any business grows, so too does the gap separating the workers and the people in charge. In 1965, American CEOs earned about 20 times more than the average employee at the same company. In the present day, that ratio is now estimated to be at least 3.
There must be another way in.
Many modern corporations have such bloated hierarchies that the top ranks will never physically see the workers who actually produce what they're selling. All that distance between them has subsequently been filled with more and more convoluted branches of middle management. So that means that when I make a mistake...
Please, all I ask is a moment of your time.
I apologize if I've been unclear or otherwise confused you with my words. It was never my intention to mislead, so let me try to clarify. Get the hell off my land.
I'm coming up!
It's a seemingly unending chain of workers each micromanaging the work beneath them. I'm starting to see where all that money may have gone from the decades of record-setting productivity. With this in mind, you have to ask yourself how demoralizing it must be for the folks further down the pyramid.
Just hear me out. What are you so afraid of?
Afraid? You think I'm afraid of anything? Least of all is self...
Just wait, old man.
It's not the mere existence of inequality that bothers me so much. It's the systematic nature of
I will not be...
how the very basis of the economy seems to rely on you getting the short end of the stick. The expression "life's not fair" doesn't say the whole story, but it's really trying to tell
You
us
will
that
train
life
me.
is rigged.
You have to.
Completely unfair. And I realized something today. It's not just about me and my dreams. It's not making it about all of us together.
Oi, brothers! Should have run when you had it.
There comes a point when it gets so unfair that it's not unless you're able to accept it as something.
Look at this dog! It's gone!
You're gonna go in tomorrow, they're gonna throw you out on the street. So
Songs and spirits can't save you now. Songs and spirits can't save you now. Why are you here? What do you want?
Best ask the boss man.
This is what happened. The government detective spent the longest time searching for information. Come up with something great idea like that, you can make millions. Never have to work again. They tried everything from entrepreneurship to stomach-eating something large, but actually ended up working with getting two-level fire truck drivers. It's a big enough settlement that he never has to work again. Tom's in pretty bad shape, but he feels better than ever. This was the
Sorry.
Not your fault. This whole place is ready to come down. Goddamn miracle it hasn't already. Anyway, who are you?
My name is Rado Hangado.
Right. Well, I'm not even...
There was a part that stuck out to me.
Careful.
Dreading his job so
It
much
wasn't a joke when I said this place was coming apart.
the way to work. In his mind, that
Why
was
don't
that
you
work
repair
was to
it?
avoid just a single day of retail.
What's the point?
So badly,
Besides, I don't have materials for
that
the
I
job.
wanted to get into a car accident.
So
I did
buy
the
them.
work. This scenario is deeply unsettling, but it does reflect how many real people actually
Look at me.
modern studies.
You think I can just march into some store, purse full of pounds, and go shopping?
Yes. Why not?
I'm so naive.
The source of mental trauma. Just Remember, if you hang in there long enough, good things can
This
happen.
way.
However, when it comes to defeating the Matrix, Peter has other ideas. His angle is all about the money. You have two options: unemployment or early retirement. The concept of retirement is awfully paradoxical if you really think about it. Most workers treat it as the big carrot at the end of the 40-year-long stick. The wonderful reward of spending your dying days finally doing nothing. The problem is, to unlock the privilege of not working, you need a lot of money, which can only be obtained by working. Of course, when you finally notice the
You don't
vicious
think
cycle,
you can just
the mind
come in
starts
here,
to
throw
wander.
those on, and call yourself an assassin?
I did not. I would never presume.
That's all right.
Way ahead of us here. Any get-rich-quick scheme you hear about will invariably waste your time and effort to make someone else rich. A situation that's really no different from the job you're trying to circumvent in the first place. By this point, you may finally catch on to how most of the world
So I
actually
trained
makes money.
in running, in climbing, in fighting, in falling, and for every lesson that concerned the body, there were two that concerned the mind.
Thank you all for
Language,
watching.
philosophy, logic, the arts. Achilles taught most often of the assassins and Templars, their structures, origins, and purpose. Centuries of history condensed into a few short days. I told him of the men who had burned my village, of Charles Lee, and my
Hatched a plan and Rose and Michael and Samir to upload a